Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and I'm taking care of business. Joining me today is Deborah Yedlin, who is president and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. Deborah, just the other day, the province in Alberta eased a bunch of public health restrictions related to COVID. I know that you had some concerns about that as a chamber. Tell me what your major concerns are.
Well, the concern was, Mario, that it happened very quickly, that if you were a business owner that went to bed on Monday night after the announcement had been made, you were trying to figure out how you were going to staff your establishment the next day, because most people had been working towards a sort of end of February, March timeframe, and all of a sudden the restrictions exemption program was going to be eliminated at midnight. And what it did, and I think this is the issue that we were very concerned about, is that this provided a level of certainty and security and comfort and confidence for consumers being able to go into establishments across the board, whether it's dining, retail, gyms, whatever you decided to do, Flames games, for example. And so all of a sudden, that level of assurance is gone. And that piece, we are concerned, will compromise consumer confidence, will compromise the businesses that are already compromised, and that will cause further problems from a recovery standpoint. The other thing is that we know that we're having a labor shortage, and if employees are not comfortable going into the establishments where they have been working because they don't know who they're interacting with in terms of vaccination status, that could also exacerbate the employment shortage. So it would have been better to have a longer runway so people knew what the deadline was and work towards that, instead of having it announced so quickly.
Well, let's talk, when you talk about consumer confidence, I think personally, the way I look at it is as long as people are required to wear masks, there is still that uncertainty there, right? Because that's kind of signals that, there's still some issues involved here, right? And there's still people catching it, the virus, et cetera. What are your thoughts and the Chamber's thoughts about the mask mandate? And it looks like if everything is proceeding along the right way, we're done with the mask on March 1st.
Well, I've talked to doctors who've said they will never stop wearing masks. Some of them will continue to wear them in public. Certainly they'll wear them when they're traveling. I think a lot of people are feeling that way. And we've seen and we know from evidence that it does prevent transmission. So it is a very rudimentary measure. We were using it before we had vaccinations, and we knew that it did help stop the spread of the variants or of COVID. So I think that's going to cause another layer of unease in terms of that mask mandate also being disbanded in March. And so it's not that we're not advocating that we have to move in a direction that opens up the economy. Absolutely. But let's do that safely, and let's not do it by compromising others in the population by doing it too quickly. I think that's the concern. We absolutely have to. We're all working in the same direction. There's always differences of opinion on how you have to get there.
Why do you think, Deborah, we're moving here in this province so quickly to ease the restrictions? Saskatchewan too. You can throw Saskatchewan and Alberta are kind of in the same boat on this, where other provinces are, we're still waiting from Ontario. Apparently today, there's some signals out of the east that Ontario may start easing stuff as well fairly quickly. But why Alberta and Saskatchewan out of the gate right away?
Obviously both provinces are getting advice from their medical officials. And they're following. It's fair to assume that they are going to be following that advice. And I would assume that the Premier Kennedy and Premier Moe received advice that felt that they could take these steps, and that's why they did. Mario, as a business reporter, you'll remember the accounting term of LIFO, last in, first out. Alberta was the last in and the first out on the vaccination passport structure. So, hopefully hopefully this proves to be the right move. But I think when you talk to restaurant owners, and I get that from them, they want to see the restrictions, removed. Great, and they say that, but they also said, it probably would have made more sense to extend the opening hours of our establishments and dispense with the early closing hours, which would give us, a couple more hours of revenue, which is what we want, and keep the REP in place so that we can still continue to operate longer, make some money, and have our consumers, our patrons, our guests feel safe.
Well, I think I heard, was it yesterday or day before, what Premier Kenney say that, that the exemption program is still there if people want to use it, right? What are the likelihoods of a restaurant actually continuing to use it on their
Well,
own?
the ship and anchors actually said that they
Oh, really?
tweeted out, yeah, 2 days ago, they said, we're going to keep it in place because we want our guests to feel safe. We want our employees to feel safe, and we want to make sure that we've got everything in place that we need so we can continue to operate. And so that's an indication, whereas others are saying, great, we're done. But the scanner app will be available, but it will not be updated, and at some point it will disappear. So if people were relying on that, then that's not really going to be an option, which give businesses the optionality, or maybe give the businesses, and this goes back to the timing piece, say it's going to sunset end of March, end of February, whatever it is, so companies and businesses can understand what they're working towards and see if there's something else they could put in place instead.
Yeah. So when you look at where we're at right now as a province, from a chamber's point of view, what would you want to see the province do now? I don't know if there's anything, we're headed down a certain road now. I don't know if there's any way to stop or any way to reverse, but what would the chamber like to see?
Well, I think that we would like to see that there's 2 more phases that they've announced in terms of what other restrictions that are going to be lifted. And we want to see that the numbers show that hospitalizations are decreasing, that the number of people that are in ICU are decreasing. And that would give people confidence to say, okay, the first phase makes sense. We're not the worse off. And now we can move ahead to phase 2 and phase 3. And, industry, the hospitality associations asking for the same kind of things. What are those metrics? What are we managing to? And I think that's the piece that people need to understand. The other interesting fact is that, the city has been working very closely with the University of Calgary and monitoring the wastewater, as you've probably heard. And what was interesting was that the viral load in the wastewater isn't coming down as fast as they would have expected. So that tells you that there's still some transmission that's taking place in the community, because it's a leading indicator for rates of infection. So I think we have to keep an eye on those numbers as well, and expect that the province will adjust their plans accordingly if that's what the data suggests.
All right, super. Thanks, Deborah, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mario.
All right, super.
Nice to see you.
Deborah Yedlin, President and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.